Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's media availability. Before we begin, allow me to introduce the Honourable Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia. We'll take questions from media participating by teleconference. We'll do one question, one follow-up in the time we have allotted, beginning with CBC's Michael Gorman. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Premier, I wonder your thoughts about Northern Pulp trying to force the province into mediation.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the question. Look, we had received the filing just last week, I think, so we're kind of looking at the options. But my only kind of obligation and concern is to the taxpayers of Nova Scotia. So we'll work with the lawyers internally to find out the best way to make sure that this gets its appropriate review.
What do you think of them essentially trying to force you into something rather than you all agreeing to do it the way perhaps it's traditionally done?
I don't think. I mean, they'll do what they do. We'll look after the taxpayers of the province, so we're not interested in being forced into anything. So we'll just make the appropriate decisions. It's a very significant case. I don't see. We won't be forced into doing anything. We'll look at the filings and we'll make the appropriate decisions on behalf of the taxpayers of the province.
Next, we'll go to Frank Campbell from the Herald. We'll come back to Frank.
Hi, Premier. Yeah, I'm here, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Frank.
Thanks. Yeah, just a couple of things. Campaign promises, wondering what the progress is on them, especially the loyalty program. One of your deputy ministers had some trouble explaining where exactly it's at yesterday during the Public Accounts Committee, and the other one is the paycheck guarantee.
Yeah, so I mean, look, we were pretty clear on the development of the platform. We put a lot of research into it. We only put things in the platform that we knew we could do, and that we knew would make a difference. So we're completely committed to everything in the platform. We've already accomplished, I would say, pretty much a breathtaking number of things off our platform commitment list just in a few short months here. So we'll continue to make progress. Those things are, you know, some of them are a little bit more complicated. So we have to make sure we really understand do the research, understand the ramifications. But we're committed to everything in the platform, and we'll just continue to execute on them. Some will be in this budget, some will be in the next budget. Some, who knows, it might take a little bit longer. But my commitment to Nova Scotians is exactly as it was during the campaign. The things in our platform we're serious about, and we will do. We were also very, very upfront that some of them will take time, particularly around healthcare, but it also extends to other issues as well. So we'll make sure we get it right. There's no point in kind of rushing them. We'll make sure we get it right. So we're doing the consultations, and we'll continue to push forward on them.
Do you have a follow-up, Frank?
I do. On another topic, I was just wondering if you might comment on the UARB decision from yesterday on the Maritime Link. It seems Nova Scotian ratepayers are being asked to continue to pay for some services they don't receive.
Yeah, so the discussion around, you know, the relationship between the utility and Nova Scotians is certainly very timely, and lots of points have been raised to me, and I have my own thoughts and considerations. Obviously, the UARB is an independent board, and they will look through volumes of evidence to reach their decision. So we respect their ability to make those decisions. But I guess I was personally surprised by some of the findings. But that said, I respect their ability and their right to make those decisions.
Moving on, we'll go to Canadian Press with Keith Doucette. Go ahead, Keith.
Premier, I guess the RCP has confirmed that the truck protesters have shut down the U.S. crossing in Manitoba, and there's talk that they may spread to New Brunswick U.S. border. No word on what potential things for Nova Scotia. I'm just wondering what your message is to protesters in general, given that provinces such as yourself have begun the process of easing COVID restrictions.
Look, it's kind of it's really kind of hard to wrap your head around some of the stuff that's happening. Obviously, I've been pretty. There's no people can protest. They can make their opinions heard and make their opinions known to the government on what the government should be doing or could do or would do differently or whatever. But they should do that in a manner that's peaceful and that's not destructive to our economies and our communities. So. Here in Halifax, we had a protest last week, which people came and they made their thoughts known, and they kind of left peacefully, which is the way it should be done. So I personally have no tolerance for blocking highways, blocking the flow of goods, and really causing harm to great parts of our society and our economy. So just don't do it is my message, and hopefully we'll see some resolution to the ones that exist.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Keith.
Yes, I'm wondering with the laws that you announced around the protests, I think it was 2 weeks ago and then last week, whether in second thought you think they're too broad. I mean, they are specific in that you don't want them blocking certain areas, but they also extend to the sides of roads. Is that a bit of an overreach, do you think?
No, not at all. Not too broad. Completely appropriate for look at what's happening in other areas. We can't have that happen. You have public safety concerns. You have all kinds of issues and concerns. So, look, it's not legal to block a road. It's not legal to impede the flow of traffic. What we did was just kind of reiterate that to people and put some fines around it and tell people that if you do break this law, these are the fines that you will get. And I don't think that, I actually don't think that, I think that they're entirely appropriate, certainly not too broad, and if anything, would look for ways to strengthen them. You just can't do it. You can't block roads. You can't disrupt entire economies. Just make your point known. The message has been received, I'm sure, by many levels of governments across the country. It's just not appropriate to block roads under any circumstance.
Next, we'll go to Alicia Draus with Global. Go ahead, Alicia.
Thank you. Premier, can you just talk a little bit about what you heard during the healthcare tour, specifically in regards to mental health? I know that your party had highlighted the importance of addressing the mental health crisis during your campaign and even proposed same-day mental health clinics. So can you also just talk about what the status of that is, how soon we might be able to see something in that regard?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. The tour itself was, it certainly had a big impact on myself and the team members that were on the tour, in the sense of reiterating a lot of the issues we knew, but raising new ones. But if nothing else, it certainly stressed the urgency, that the need to get to work on these things. So, and we are, and I think the minister can comment more on the specifics. But I know that it's our intention to roll a plan out as to how we really start to address these. Over the next, I think sometime in March, maybe the end of March, possibly into April. So I'm not exactly sure on the timeline, but I do know it's our intention to roll out a plan, which would really start to put some details around how these can be addressed. But what I would say is, we feel the urgency, certainly around addictions and mental health, but definitely around access to primary care. We know the wait list now for the backlog that's been caused by COVID. So we feel the urgency. There's a lot that's being done. But we have a lot that we are ready to roll out to on a timeline. So we feel the urgency, and the overall thing was from the tour as there's no substitute for looking somebody in the eye and experiencing the emotion that they're experiencing over these issues, and that's what the tour was all about.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Alicia.
Thank you. Just in terms of the pandemic and businesses, there's a lot of businesses that are still struggling. I know the government has provided a number of supports, but there are businesses, say, particularly in the retail sector, who say they're not quite qualifying for the supports, given that, recently they were never mandated to close or there weren't too many limits on them. That being said, they're still calling for help, saying the pandemic is severely impacting them. I know that you've been asked this before and you said that you're looking at all avenues, but is the government going to help small businesses who are struggling right now but don't qualify for any of the current measures? And when might they know about that?
So thank you for the question. So obviously we've announced a reopening plan, and in the case of retail, which you mentioned specifically, they're back to full capacity. I've heard a lot of optimism around the reopening plan, and people, a lot of Nova Scotians are ready to get moving forward in a gradual, methodical pace, and that's what we've announced with the reopening plan. So what I would say is we're seeing the return to normal. Asking specifically about going back and looking at programs and how they may have helped over the last 6 months, or helped or didn't help over the last 6 months. I mean, we will continue to do that, but and I'll always listen to more information that's presented and stuff. But the reality is that there was a number of supports in place when we came to government. We only added to those. We didn't discontinue anything. So those supports that were in place had been developed over a couple of waves with the benefit of experience and tweaking and adding to, and we're willing to do that as well. We did a bit of that, but I would say the message to business is the same as the message to Nova Scotia. Is we are on the path to opening up, and there's reason for optimism about a return to normal under our gradual reopening program.
Next, we'll go to Brian Flynn with All Nova Scotia. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, Premier. I wonder if we could steer back to Northern Pulp for a moment. The former Premier, Steve McNeil, I guess, had said repeatedly that Nova Scotia has a liability to Northern Pulp over the shutdown at Boat Harbour. And I'm just wondering, I don't know if I've asked you this before, but in regards to the lawsuit that's been launched, do you believe that Nova Scotia has some liability to the company?
The courts will decide. It's before the courts, and the courts will decide. What I believe is not relevant at this stage, given we're in the middle of a court case.
Do you have a follow-up, Brian?
Yeah, I do, please. So, Premier, just going back to the questions that Mike Gorman was asking earlier and your answers to that, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about what the pros and cons would be in terms of going into mediation with this company rather than going through what could be a lengthy fight in court.
Well, listen, the legal team is kind of looking at that, and they'll make a recommendation on what they think is in the best interests of the taxpayers of this province, and that's the analysis that I'm interested in, because that's the only thing that we're really concerned about, is protecting the interests of the taxpayers of Nova Scotia. The company has advanced their own assessment of what the pros and cons are, and they talked about a quicker timeline, and that leading to reduced costs for both parties. But that's the company's assessment. So I'll wait for the assessment from our own legal folks here.
Moving along, we'll go to Jennifer Henderson with the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Jennifer. Jen?
Good morning. Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, we can hear you, Jennifer.
Okay, great. A quick question with respect to renewables. The previous government extended the deadline until the end of 22 for us to get to 40% renewables generating electricity. I'm curious to know whether you would consider extending that deadline further if deliveries from Muskrat Falls don't ramp up as expected. We're still falling quite short, and although 2022, the end of 2022 is still 10 months away, I think it's worth asking where you stand on that.
I think what we do is we look to the utility. If they give an indication that it's just not possible to meet it, then obviously that triggers a set of decisions to be made. But they haven't given that indication that it's not possible to meet that. So we'll continue to understand from them what's possible or what's not. If they flag that it's not possible, then there'll be there's legislative options. There's the things that can be done. I don't deem those as necessary until I hear that it can't be met.
Do you have a follow-up, Jennifer?
Yes, thank you, Premier, for that. I may have missed this, so forgive me if you've already spoken on the topic, but I think a month ago, when you received recommendations from the Minimum Wage Committee, you indicated that you wanted to take a bit of time before deciding whether to endorse the second increase, which would come in October. Have you made a decision on that at this point?
Yeah, we have, and Minister Balser can speak to this fully, but it's my understanding that we're accepting the recommendations of the panel.
Moving along, we'll go to Elizabeth Buckmaster with the Signal. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi. So I was just wondering, the census has shown that we have a large increase in population in Nova Scotia and in Halifax specifically. So I was just wondering what the province attributes this increase in population to.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think Nova Scotians are pretty proud of the population growth. It shows that other people across the country and around the world are kind of seeing what we already knew, what a wonderful place this is to live. So we're excited about the growth. I mean, in the report, some of the at least one of the issues it pointed to was the way that the pandemic was managed here in this province. That was respected by a lot of people and admired, and even to the point where they thought maybe they'd move here and be part of this great province. So, but I think there's a quality of life in Nova Scotia that we can offer to people that once they become aware of it, they're very interested in it. So we obviously as a government have very ambitious population growth goals. So we're excited to see the population growing across the province. It's a great time to be in Nova Scotia.
Isabel, my apologies. I had your name incorrect on my list. Do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. So how is the province preparing in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of the economy and job market for the population increase?
Thank you, Isabel, for that. So it's all about, I think what you're kind of speaking to is kind of planned growth. We know that as a province, we have lots of issues in healthcare to address to make sure that when people move here, they can access the healthcare that they need in a timely manner. So issues in housing. So we've taken some steps in housing to make sure that we're looking out to the future needs of citizens, of Nova Scotians, and preparing for them. So those are infrastructure investments, those are healthcare investments, those are all kinds of areas. But certainly in the economy, there are opportunities for people in this province. We just need to make sure that everyone sees those opportunities, is aware of those opportunities, and knows that they can make their life here in Nova Scotia. But it's all about planned growth, and that's what we're very focused on.
And next, we'll go to Jean LaRoche with CBC. Go ahead, Jean.
Good afternoon, Premier. Given your stance on no tolerance for blocking roads, I wondered your thoughts on what's happening in Ottawa and the effect that is having on spurring others to do similar protests.
I think, like a lot of people, it just kind of I've just been watching what's unfolding there with a little bit of shock and bewilderment. The fact that it's been going on for so long, and the fact that I don't know where the impasse is, and I don't think lots of people do. But so a little shocked by what's kind of unfolded, and certainly concerned when you see other protests propping up in other areas. So that's why we've taken some steps as a government to trying to protect Nova Scotians against some of the more extreme forms of protests.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Jean.
Yep. On another topic, as you know, there's a timeline in the mandate letters to kind of lay out the way forward for some of the campaign commitments that you and your government made. As you know, a number of people have asked under the Access to Information Law for those timelines, and I received a bunch yesterday from your government that all of them are completely redacted. And so I'm wondering, why is it that you and your government feel that the people of Nova Scotia don't have a right to that information?
I don't think that that's the feeling of our government at all. I think we've been very responsive to the FOIPOP requests. I thought you were going to ask about that little misleading story that was out earlier in the week about some FOIPOP requests from our office. A little bit sensational on some of the wording on those, but the topic of FOIPOP is still very relevant. And the reality is that the government we have a bunch of platform commitments. We will fulfill those. We have to do it in a methodical way, in a timeline that makes sense, that works for Nova Scotians. Those timelines have not been approved by the government. So to share draft working documents, draft advice to minister, can you imagine trying to run a government when you were having to put stuff out there before it's been accepted by the government, before it's been approved by the government, while they're working on plans in the best interest? Of course, it makes most sense that the government would come up with the plan and how they would fulfill those commitments and then release it. To try and release it piecemeal or prematurely, it just doesn't suit. It's just not to the benefit of Nova Scotians. So we're very serious about our platform commitments. We'll execute on those. I think any reasonable assessment of how we've performed in executing on platform commitments would probably show that this government has executed much quicker than any other government, certainly in recent history in this province. So we're executing on them. We will continue to do that. I think in terms of the FOIPOP process in more general terms, we've been incredibly responsive through that process, and we'll continue to be so.
And that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you very much, Premier.
Thanks, everyone.